morning. Welcome to the Sunday morning worship service at DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Bob Smallwood, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Unitarian Universalism is a faith tradition committed to creating a just and flourishing world for all people. Our Universalist theology tells us that every person is worthy of love. Thus, when we say, whoever you are, wherever you are in life's journey, you are welcome here, this is our message of love to you, inviting you, your whole self, into this space to help us co-create a world centered on our values. We invite you to learn more about us and consider joining this community to enact our values of equity, justice, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. I have one announcement from the Fire of Commitment team. A reminder that during the month of March, we are empowering each of you to make your pledge to our Promise campaign for the upcoming year through our Realm program. It's easy peasy, but if you need help, please see Tina Lewis. We're counting on you, and we thank you for the fire of your commitment. Now, if you are online, I invite you to greet each other through the chat. And if you are present here, I invite you to turn to someone you did not come with and greet them with a wave and a good morning greeting.
I light this chalice for the UU shared value of interdependence. We honor the interdependent web of all existence and acknowledge our place in it.
Let us enter into the fellowship of this morning with heart and mind and spirit. May our hearts be open to the joys and sorrows, the hopes and burdens of those who sit beside us. May our minds understand the many ways people express themselves as we struggle to give voice to the wisdom that lies within us. May our spirits be attuned to the deepest chords of reality as we center ourselves in communion with the mystery of being. During this hour of worship, may our souls find peace, and may the blessings of love be present with us in our togetherness.
Please rise in body and spirit and join in singing hymn number 77 in the Gray Hymnal, Seek Not Afar for Beauty. Please join me in reading our DUC mission statement. We gather as an inclusive community to grow in character, mind, and spirit, and to transform the world towards fairness, love, and compassion. Our vision of beloved community is rooted in the relationships we have with each other, our world, and creation. Each week we share our joys and concerns. Today's flowers were given by Diane Gelder in celebration of Roy Gelder's birthday, which was on March 7th. Even when the cares of the world weigh on us, may we find joy in our connections with each other and in the pleasures that life holds. Let us care for one another and ourselves in all the ways that we can. You may remain in your seats as we come together in a sung meditative prayer. We will sing hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small, 3 times, and then share a moment of silence.
In storm and rain, sorrow and It is time to gather. Today's story is about a boy and a moose. It is named "This Moose Belongs to Me" by Oliver Jeffers. Wilfred owned a moose. He didn't always own a moose. The moose came to him a while ago, and he just knew, that it was meant to be his. He thought he would call him Marcel. He began following Marcel, explaining the rules of how to be a good pet. Much of the time, it seemed as though the moose wasn't listening, but Wilfred knew he was, mostly because he followed Rule 4 very well, not making too much noise while Wilfred played his record collection. Sometimes the moose wasn't a very good pet. He generally ignored Rule 7, going whichever way Wilfred wants to go. And the moose had a very good sense of direction, and Wilfred did not. And because the moose was particularly poor on Rule 7, subsection B, maintaining a certain proximity to home, Wilfred quickly learned to bring some string along on their outings so he could find his way back again. Sometimes the moose was an excellent pet. He had no trouble with Rule 11, providing shelter from the rain, or Rule 16, knocking down things that are out of Wilfred's reach. One day, as Wilfred discussed their plans for the coming year on a particularly long walk, he made a terrible discovery. Someone else thought they owned the moose. "Rodrigo, you're back!" Wilfred was dumbstruck. This moose was Marcel, not Rodrigo. The old lady was mistaken, and Wilfred thought it only proper that he correct her. "This moose belongs to me," he explained. And to prove it, he called Marcel. "Heel!" But the moose did not respond. He seemed more interested in the old lady. "Good, Rodrigo." "Fine." Embarrassed and enraged, Wilfred rushed off for home. But in his haste, and miles from anywhere, he tripped over his string and got tangled up. And there he lay. And Wilfred was beginning to get a little worried. It was getting late, and the monsters would be out soon. He had just ruled out the last of his options when along came the moose and performed Rule 73 brilliantly, rescuing your owner from perilous situations. All was forgiven. And perhaps, Wilfred admitted, he never really owned the moose anyway. With that in mind, he and the moose reached a compromise, and the moose would agree to all of Wilfred's rules whenever it suited him. "Dominic, you're back, and you brought me an apple." Let's sing to the children.
Picasso offers that the meaning of life is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. Giving of our treasure is how we reciprocate the many gifts we are given by this community. Even in an uncertain world, we have so much to be grateful for: life itself, our planet, love, and each other. Giving is also how we live our values. Each month we share our offerings with an organization that gives life to these values and makes a difference in the world. Our March special offering is for Riverwalk Adult Day Services. Founded in 1983 by a group of 15 religious institutions, including our church, who recognize the desire and benefits for adults to age in place at home, but who could not be left at home alone. Riverwalk Adult Day Services has provided over 700,000 hours of services by providing a safe, social, stimulating environment for adults in need of daytime care. As we pass our offering plate, know that it is a vessel that connects us to each other through our gratitude and our generosity. So give freely your thankfulness and abundance that our values can forever take hold in the world. Excerpts from An Ode to Living on Earth by Oliver Jeffers. Earth is pretty great. It's home to us and germs. This home is also home to cars, Brussels sprouts, those weird fish things that have their own headlights, art, fire extinguishers, laws, pigeons, bottles of beer, lemons and light bulbs, Pinot Noir and paracetamol, ghosts, mosquitoes, flamingos, flowers, the ukulele, elevators and cats, cat videos, the internet, iron beams, buildings and batteries, all ingenuity and bright ideas, all known life, and a bunch of other stuff. Pretty much everything we know and ever heard of. It's my favorite place, actually. This small orb, floating in a cold and lonely part of the cosmos. It doesn't skip me that of all the places in the universe, people only live on Earth, can only live on Earth, and even then only on some of the dry bits. There's only a very small part of the surface of our planet that is actually hospitable to human life. And squeezed in here is where all of us live. It's easy to forget when you're up close to the dirt, the rocks, the foliage, the concrete of our lands, just how limited the room for maneuvering is. For all the importance in the cosmos we believe we hold, we'd have nothing if not for this Earth, while it would keep happily spinning obliviously without us. When you think about it another way, If Earth is the only place where people live, it's actually the least lonely place in the universe. There are plenty of people to be loved by and plenty of people to love. We need each other. We know that now more than ever. Please rise in body or in spirit and join us in singing hymn number 346, Come Sing a Song with Me.
Holy Water. That was the title of an essay by author Joan Didion, who wrote about water. Didion's Holy Water essay began like this. Some of us who live in arid parts of the world think about water with a reverence others might find excessive. She admitted to a near obsession about waterworks to the point that she would meditate on how the water I will draw from my tap in Malibu is today crossing the Mojave Desert from the Colorado River. So how many of us likewise meditate on where our water comes from? I live in Chicago, and I know that my water is drawn from Lake Michigan. But until I read Didion's essay, I hadn't wondered exactly what path it takes as it travels. And yet, I too have lived in an arid part of the world. Before moving to Chicago, I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where rock gardens are the norm and water rationing is not uncommon. Like Didion's Malibu, aridity was the single most prominent feature of Albuquerque's climate. I must confess that since I moved to Chicago, I have gazed upon the sea-like expanse of Lake Michigan with an attitude I might describe as smug, since in this city, I am confident I will not run out of water. Why then trouble myself to trace my tap water's travels? After all, water reliably reaches its most important destination, my faucet. Didion would likely say that I now think about water with a reference others might find inadequate. Chicago's dependable water is no longer Albuquerque's holy water. It has become ordinary water, profane water. Just as I have admittedly taken almost zero interest in how the water moves in Chicago, I have taken little interest in the provenance and travels of the electricity I turn on and off with the mere flip of a switch. Never did it cross my mind to wonder where the stuff that powered my dishwasher or the reading light on my desk came from. I had a vague notion of a power plant somewhere beyond the city's limits, but how far the electricity it generated traveled and over what terrain on its way to my home's meter box, I had not a clue. It was ordinary electricity, profane electricity. Until one day, this was in the 2000s, Claire Butterfield, then a Unitarian Universalist community minister, affiliated with Unity Temple in Oak Park, invited me and several other members of the clergy on a 3-day outing. Claire founded the NGO Faith in Place, which works with religious partners to promote environmental stewardship, and she excelled at securing grants to take religious leaders on educational earth-focused trips. In our case, she had planned a trip to southern Illinois so we could learn more about coal mining. What I learned during my 3 days with Claire came to feel like a rather unwelcome insight into the ways of electricity. I learned that Illinois is the 4th largest coal-producing state in the nation. Surprise. I thought coal came from states in the Rust Belt, like West Virginia and Pennsylvania. Those states, it turns out, yield the clean coal used in steel mills, whereas Illinois yields the dirty, high-sulfur coal used in power plants. Now, some of you will laugh at my ignorance, but I truly knew nothing about Illinois' huge coal reserves and long history of mining. It turns out that the state's extensive coal seams started to be mined as far back as the 1850s, and coal has been extracted from 3 out of 4 counties in the state. And of course, I learned that the power plant in Romeoville, then a source of electricity for Chicago, was coal-fired, and it had been so for the previous 6 decades. I thought southern Illinois was mostly farmland, which it was and is. But as I discovered, in the early 1900s, coal companies bought up the mineral rights to much of what is underneath the farmland and eventually dug and dug and dug. While I, with Claire and fellow clergy, couldn't see the vast labyrinth of underground mines beneath farmland and homes and towns, what I did see were vast stretches of land sinking in areas with poorly reinforced mining tunnels. Sections of fields have been known to plummet as much as 7 feet. So that's what it looks like. This unevenly collapsed farmland was originally completely flat. It used to be straightforward for industrial sprinklers to water this land, and the level ground made it easy to farm. But the rise and fall of the land resulting from mining-induced collapses have changed the way water runs off and drains. Water now runs downhill into the sunken patches and floods them, while the higher patches of farmland become parched. All this is bad news for farming and farmers. The law, as I learned, does not require coal mine operators to compensate farmers for losses due to these permanent changes in the quality of their farmland. And since farmers don't own their land's mineral rights, they make no money from the extraction taking place below their property. In addition, modern coal mining has become a nearly automated operation that uses powerful equipment to remove coal in long panels up to 1,400 feet wide. These machines are operated by just a few skilled workers so they are not a significant source of employment for locals. And adding insult to injury, most of the Illinois' coal ends up shipped overseas. I also saw vast open air ponds filled with millions of gallons of toxic wastewater mixed in with silt and solids. The slurry is a byproduct of washing Illinois' dirty coal to help it burn more cleanly. It contains heavy metals, arsenic, and other pollutants. The slurry ponds I saw relied on specially made thick plastic liners to prevent the toxic waste from seeping into the ground. But it won't surprise you when I tell you that the ponds sometimes leak anyway. These leaks can contaminate nearby groundwater forever. People in the area I visited often rely on wells that they've dug on their land as their source of drinking and other water for their homes. Wells that draw from contaminated aquifers end up having to find alternative sources of clean energy. This is actually a coal ash pond that sits next to coal-powered power stations, because the coal burns and it leaves ash behind, which then has to be put somewhere. So that's what that looks like. So when I was in southern Illinois, I also saw these slag heaps, which is what's left over from the mining process. So that's not coal, it's stuff separated out of the coal. And so on this trip, I discovered, to my shock and horror, that I was personally implicated in this rape of Illinois' land and water. And it still really makes me want to weep, especially because precious resources like groundwater and aquifers and rivers were so blithely polluted. These sources and reserves of water were treated as expandable, when I know, like anyone who's lived in an arid region like Albuquerque, water is a limited, precious resource. So after spending 3 days of coming to face with the lasting harm to the landscape, water, soil, and to people's livelihoods and lives, I quite honestly felt destroyed. The reality, which I could no longer ignore, made me feel ashamed, angry, regretful, complicit, and filled me with horror and rage and terrible grief. So what to do? How to go on? How could I come to terms with the damage already done? How could I endure my complicity every time I switched on my kitchen lights or plugged in my phone charger? And so how could I be forgiven? Should I be forgiven? I did not know what to do with myself. For days, it seemed that I could not escape or rise above this soul-crushing despair. So this is Romeoville, the power plant that was generating electricity for my home. It turns out that what I was feeling is such a common reaction by those who care deeply about our earth that it's been given a name: echo grief. I was partly suffering from echo grief. But grief really wasn't all I felt. I was also trying to come to terms with a sense of my own culpability, my own willful ignorance, my own confusion and paralysis about how to do better, how to make things better. It took a while, but finally I realized that mine was that most human of emotions. I was lamenting. Yes, I was lamenting like so many others have, probably since the dawn of human history. No wonder the Hebrew Bible includes an entire book called Lamentations. These ancient words from Lamentations, though plucked out of context, perfectly capture my feelings about my trip to southern Illinois. This is Lamentations 5:15 through 17. The joy in our hearts has ceased. Our dancing has been turned to mourning. The crown has fallen from our head. Woe to us, for we have sinned. Because of this, our hearts are sick. Because of these things, our eyes have grown dim. I was lamenting the way of electricity and its reliance on destructive coal mining. I was weary and given no rest, to quote Lamentations again. So I turned to our Unitarian Universalist tradition looking for hymns or poems or rituals that could be of help to me. I eventually concluded that, as far as I could tell, Unitarians don't have a tradition of lament per se. In general, I think we prefer to maintain a positive outlook, to pull ourselves together no matter what, and marshal on. In our hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition, there is no category of songs and readings listed as lament. Rather, there are songs and readings categorized as healing and comfort. I'll take that. Interestingly, this category includes Kumbaya. Also, Amazing Grace. Yes, I say that hymn qualifies as lament. And one of my favorite hymns, Precious Lord, Take My Hand, as well as the gorgeous hymn, What Wondrous Love Is This? Still, what would ritual lament on a Sunday morning look like? Because lament includes a confession of sin, or if you prefer, an expression of remorse and guilt. This matters because, at least in my case, I found that to start moving past the paralysis of grief and rage, I had to begin by acknowledging the part that I had played in this violence. Our hymnal does not have a category for confession. It does have one for sorrow, but none of the hymns in this category speak of personal wrongdoing. For this, I found reading 637, a litany of atonement, written by the Reverend Robert Eller Isaacs. But to my mind, it moves too quickly into self-forgiveness. I do appreciate reading 662, Strange and Foolish Walls, by one of my favorite Unitarian thinkers and ministers of old, A. Powell Davies. Perhaps you too recall a period of lament in your lives, perhaps not over the ways of coal and electricity, but over something else, perhaps unrelated to the earth. Though Unitarian Universalism does not have explicit rituals of lament, I want to celebrate the idea that because we belong to this community, none of us needs ever be alone when we are felled by echo grief or other causes of lament. When we Unitarian Universalists are at our best, we are there for each other. The book of Lamentation ends like this: Restore us to yourself, O Lord, that we may be restored. Renew our days as of old. In this spirit, let us help restore each other to ourselves, that we may all be restored. Sadly, and we lament this, it is not possible to renew our days as of old when it comes to the harm done to the earth. But we have our hearts to give, and we believe in the strength of our love for each other. So in that spirit, let us sing hymn number 354, We Laugh, We Cry, and you need not rise for this.
Feel
The tireless work of activists helped shut down the Waukegan coal-powered electric plant in June of 22. It had been in operation since 1923, so almost 100 years. The closure came after years of advocacy by CARE, or Citizens Against Ruining the Environment. This is the Waukegan plant, now closed. I wanted to believe that it was the tireless work of activists that finally shut down the Romeoville power plant, also shut down in 22. It had been in operation since 1960. And in a way it was, though the truth is slightly more complicated. When NRG, the company that owned and operated both the Waukegan and Romeoville plants, announced their shutdown, it was not so much in response to activist demands or to the health and environmental hazards posed to nearby residents. No, NRG announced that competition with subsidized energy sources like wind, solar, and nuclear power, as well as natural gas, meant that using coal to generate electricity was no longer profitable. Coal had become too expensive compared to subsidized clean energy. So it turns out activists were key, but it took working in locked arms with environmental scientists, governmental agencies, green corporations, legislators, and other policymakers to steer tax dollars towards subsidies of renewable energy sources. When NRG shut down Waukegan and Romeoville, it did so in response to the efforts of a vast collaborative network across multiple sectors and involving many actors. The work was slow, the work was tedious, the work was frustrating, the work took years and years. It demanded taking time after work, even when exhausted, to write emails, organize meetings, attend meetings, more meetings, and yet more meetings, visit legislators, pressure legislators, engage scientists, learn science only scientists really love. It meant getting up early on the weekends, passing up going to a movie with friends, time, all of it without guarantee those efforts would pay off tomorrow, next year, next decade, or in this lifetime. But in this case, it did, eventually. So I need not rehearse the effect of human-caused climate change. Some of us are old enough to remember the world's weather patterns before these changes, when we looked forward to summer with its happy days of sunshine and warmth, outdoor barbecues with neighbors, and lazy afternoons at the swimming pool. Whereas now in parts of the country, summer brings fear of triple-digit temperatures and drought, longer tornado seasons, and ever more devastating hurricanes. The Reformed theologian Jürgen Moltmann pointed out that we do not know whether humanity will actually survive these self-made horrors, but we do know that we must act today as if the future of human life depends on us. Us includes the more than 7 billion people who already live on Earth today. This number is expected to hit 8 billion at some point in this century, before it begins to drop precipitously at the 2100-year mark. From now until then, we have the scientific and technological ability to create untold more damage to our planet and render even larger sections uninhabitable. The Earth, in whatever the condition we leave it, will survive our disappearance. For Moltmann, the question for us is this: how can we love life and affirm our being as humans, while also demanding a change in our lifestyle and a change in the basic values and convictions of our society? It is unrealistic to expect the world's peoples to return to the patterns and rhythms of the ancient and pre-modern agrarian world. None of us wants to relinquish our standard of living. Others in the world have the right to set their sights on living as well as we do in the Northern Hemisphere. Everyone aspires to and has the right to adequate protection against the elements, adequate housing, adequate health care, adequate education, adequate opportunities, adequate work. As standards of living rise throughout the globe, we will all make heavier and heavier demands on the Earth's resources. Imagine if all 7 billion lived at the same standard of living we do here in the United States. And they should aspire to our level of comfort and ease, and they do. To make this possible will require the kind of collaborations that finally compelled Waukegan's and Romeoville's environmentally destructive plants to shut down in favor of renewable, clean energy sources. My PhD advisor liked to say that hope has no wings because it cannot fly. Hope was pointless or worse because it was a distraction when it came to what is really needed, a feasible plan of action. Moltmann, on the other hand, prefers to take on hope of the Enlightenment philosopher Immanuel Kant. Kant said, "Thinking in the power of hope is not the train bearer of reality. Instead, it goes ahead of reality and lights its way with a torch." For Moltmann, Christian hope draws God's promised future into the present and helps us prepare the present day for this future. If we're not Christian, we can still follow Moltmann's thinking in this way. We can draw into the present the vision of a future with a healthy planet where everyone has an opportunity for a good life, and prepare today for this future. For Moltmann, this future-oriented approach embraces much that is new: a new spirit, a new heart, a new human being, a new covenant, a new song, and ultimately the promise of a new, different future. It is our hope that this new world will come to pass that lights the way forward. As Unitarian Universalists, we can realistically face the full force of humanity's challenges while also embracing an authentic hope of transcending these challenges. We can follow Moltmann when he advocates a culture of life that is stronger than the terror of death, a love of life that overcomes the destructive forces in our world today, and a confidence in our hope for a future that overcomes doubt and fatalism. It sounds strange perhaps, but I take great comfort in knowing that the earth existed without human beings for millions of years, and that it will no doubt survive for millions of years without us should all of us disappear. That said, I do find reasons to love life and affirm humanity, even if admittedly there are times I fall back into echo grief and lament. To claw my way back out, I hold on to the knowledge that the tireless work of activists and a vast network of collaborations shut down the Romeoville power plant. We can all think of such successes, however small. They are real. They make a difference. For me, Chicago's new earth improved way of electricity gives me reasons to have faith in my fellow human beings, to love life, affirm humanity, and work today to prepare for a new, better future. Without a doubt, this hoped-for world will demand a lifestyle based on renewable energy and a recycling economy, and a change in the basic values and convictions of our society. But human beings have risen to the task, and shown that we can bring about key ecological transformations to our society. And it begins here with you, with this congregation, with the spirit of communal solidarity and mutual help that nurtures all of our hopes. May it be so.
Good morning. My name is Alexis Traki, and I've been attending DUUC for about 2 years, and I've been a member for a little over a year now. When I was first asked to kick off this month of testimonials and to share what beloved community means to me, I immediately thought of the story of how I came to be connected with DUUC. It illuminates the power of beloved community in my life. My family and I moved to Naperville in the summer of 2021 from Chicago. We moved in the hopes of finding a little more space for ourselves and our kids. We settled into the community quite well and slowly started making local connections and building relationships over the next year. At some point in 2022, my friend and fellow Mount Holyoke College alum, Elizabeth Harding, who is a UU community minister, reached out to me and said, "Alexis, didn't you move to Naperville?" She said, "You should go check out the new minister at the UU church in Naperville. She is amazing." Elizabeth reached out because she knew that over the years I'd been searching for a faith community for myself and my kids that resembled the one I had grown up in. A progressive community that celebrated diversity, emphasized meaningful connection, and preached a message of justice, compassion, and kindness. I thanked Elizabeth for her recommendation, and then I got busy with life again. In January 2023, I attended a local community group for parents, and I sat next to a nice couple named Chris and Kat. I asked them how they heard about the group, and they said, "Oh, our church shared it with us." I asked them what church they went to, and they said DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I told them I'd heard of it. I left the group and went home to my husband and said, "I keep hearing about this church, DUUC. Let's get up tomorrow and go check it out. So the next day, we came here and we attended the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration service. During that service, Reverend Mandy explored the Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing, a song that I had grown up with and sang throughout my life. I took that service as a sign and decided to find out what this place was all about. Well, fast forward to 2025, and I have learned that this place is the faith community that I had been searching for. I was brought to this place through the power of my own community, and I've stayed because of DUUC's efforts to create beloved community. Whether it is in my chalice circle at Suzanne and Kathy's house, or teaching RE with Jack, Kate, Rosa, and Mara, or assisting with pastoral ministry associates, or attending a leadership workshop series by Karen and Ann, or most amazingly, sitting across from a Mount Holyoke College 1955 alum at a women's wisdom workshop. My whole life, I've been raised to believe that you have to actively participate in and create the communities that you want to be a part of. And I have never seen that ring more true than at DUUC. I am continually amazed that I have found a community of people from all walks of life who share my values and are striving towards a world filled with justice and peace. This community is generous in spirit and action, and it inspires me to live out those values most important to me: generosity, justice, and equity. I often joke that DUUC reminds me of the sitcom Cheers. It's the place where everyone knows your name. And although I laugh as I say that, I also cannot help but think about what an amazing gift that is. In a world that is increasingly hostile and unsafe, I have found an inclusive, compassionate community that is working towards a more loving, a more just, and a more peaceful world. To me, that is what building a beloved community is all about. As my late mother would have said, Alexis, it sounds like you found your people. Thank you.
Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are very high. Take courage, for deep down there is another truth. You are not alone.
Please join me in reading our chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish the light of this chalice, but not the light in our hearts. Until we meet again, may the warmth of our community carry you.